Welcome to the Thea Lee podcast. It is January 7th, 2026, and we are continuing on day 7 of our reading through the Bible. Today we pick up where Abraham is planning a feast and a celebration because his son Isaac is about to be weaned. But right at the same time, Sarah sees Ishmael, Abraham and Hagar's son, making fun of Isaac. So she gets really angry and tells Abraham that she wants him to get rid of Hagar and Ishmael. Abraham's pretty upset about this because Ishmael is also his son, but the Lord comes to him and tells him not to be upset about this, that he should just do what Sarah asked, because it is through Isaac that his descendants will be counted. But God also says that he will make a nation of the descendants of Hagar's son, because it is also his son too. So Abraham got up the next morning and got food and water and sent Hagar and Ishmael out. They wandered around in the wilderness for a while until they ran out of food and water. Ishmael sat underneath a bush in the shade, and then Hagar went a ways off from him and was crying. And it says the angel of the Lord came and asked why she was crying, and she said that she didn't want to watch the boy die. But the angel says God heard the boy crying, and he is going to take care of them, that he will be a great nation from his descendants. And he opened Hagar's eyes, and she saw that there was a well full of water. So she filled her water container and gave the boy a drink. And then God did take care of the boy as he grew up in the wilderness, and later Hagar found him a wife from the land of Egypt. Now we move on to Abraham making a treaty with the king Amalek. Now, Amalek is the king that he had just lied to about Sarah being his wife yesterday. But today the king comes to him and says that obviously God is with Abraham and that he helps him in everything he does. So he wants to make a treaty with Abraham saying that he will never harm him or his descendants, and he wants Abraham to say the same back. So Abraham swears that, but then Abraham does tell him that some of Amalek's servants had taken by force a well that Abraham had dug. And the king says he had never heard of this before, but Abraham gives him sheep and goats and cattle for this covenant, but then he also separates out 7 lambs. And the king says, "What is this about?" And he said, "I want you to accept these lambs to show your agreement that I dug this well." So Abraham is wanting ownership of this well. So they made their agreement. The king left, and after he left, Abraham praised God, and he planted a tamarisk tree by that well, and that place is called Beersheba, which means the well of the oath. So this is interesting because a tamarisk tree is a pine tree that grows very, very slowly. So if you plant this tree, you know that you're never going to see it grow to its full height in your lifetime. It's one of those things that you plant this tree for future generations. And Abraham knew that someday his descendants would own this land, so he planted it for them. So we go on now to God testing Abraham. One day, God called Abraham, which is interesting because it always is like God calls Abraham. And then Abraham says, "Yes, here I am." And God said that he wanted Abraham to take his only son, Isaac, who he loved so much, and go and sacrifice him in the land of Moriah. And he was going to be the one that would be the burnt offering. So the next morning, Abraham gets up and gets everything ready. He saddles the donkey. He takes Isaac. He cuts some wood to bring along for the sacrifice, and he takes 2 of his servants, and they go head towards Moriah. After a couple days of traveling, he sees far off where he's supposed to do this sacrifice, so he tells the servants to wait, and he takes Isaac, and they start climbing this mountain. And his son says, "We have everything for the fire, but where is the lamb to be sacrificed?" Abraham answers him and says, "God will provide a sheep for the burnt offering, my son." So they get to the place, and Abraham makes the altar and arranges the wood on it, ties up his son Isaac and places him on the altar. And right when he picks up the knife to kill his son as a sacrifice, the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven and said, "Abraham, Abraham." And Abraham, of course, said, "Yes, here I am." And it said, "Don't lay a hand on the boy. Do not hurt him in any way. For now I know that you truly fear God. You have not withheld from me even your son, your only son." So then Abraham sees that there is a ram that's stuck in a bush nearby. So he goes and gets that ram, and he sacrifices that ram as his burnt offering. And then they go back down and return to the servants. Soon after this, Abraham heard that his brother Nahor had 8 sons and some daughters, And one of those sons, Bethuel, had a daughter named Rebekah. So then we skip ahead to the time when Sarah was 127 years old. She died at a place now called Hebron, and Abraham mourned and wept for her. So he asked the leaders there if he could buy a burial spot from them. And one of them said, "Oh no, you're willing to help us, so we will just give you this burial spot." But there was kind of an argument back and forth. Abraham ends up paying 400 pieces of silver for this burial spot, and they bury Sarah. So next, Abraham is very old now, and he is talking to one of his servants, and he wants his servant to make an oath to him. And the way he says they're going to make this oath is he wants a servant to put his hand under his thigh and swear by the Lord that he is not going to allow his son Isaac to marry one of the local Canaanite women. Instead, he wants the servant to go back to his homeland and find a wife out of his relatives for his son Isaac. So his servant does this. He goes and travels back. He takes camels, and he has a whole bunch of riches and things to offer to the family when he gets there. After he gets close to there and he's coming close to the place, he prays to God and asks him for help to find the right woman for Isaac. So he says, "I'm going to go to this well, Lord. The young women are coming out to get water. So I'm going to ask one of them for a drink of water and let her give me a drink, and then have her say also that she's going to give my camels a drink. And then let that be the woman that you have for Isaac." So he goes, and of course, Rebekah shows up, and he asks her for a drink, and she quickly gives him a drink and says, "I will draw water for your camels too." Then he asks her who she is and who her family line is, and she says that she is the daughter of Bethuel, and her grandparents are Nahor and Milcah. And he asks if they have room for guests, and so she says, "Yes, of course, you can come stay." And so then the man bows and worships God and praises God because he had shown him unfailing love and faithfulness to his master, for he led him straight to the master's relatives. So she runs home and tells the family everything that's going on. And he had given her, I guess when he met her, he gave her a nose ring and some jewelry. So her brother Laban comes back out and asks what's going on. So Abraham's servant explains to him what's happening. He tells him that Abraham is a very wealthy man, that God has greatly blessed him, and that when Sarah was very old, she had a son, and Isaac now needs a wife, and so that he had been sent to find a wife for Isaac. He brings all of these gifts and asks the family if he can take Rebekah back. So their answer to him is that obviously the Lord is with them. And after hearing his story of praying and the way he would find her, and Rebekah fulfilled that exactly, they said, "Yes, it sounds like the Lord is with you, so you can take her." But then the next morning, when he went to leave, her brother and mother said that they wanted her to stay for 10 days. But the servant said, "No, I have to go now." So they asked Rebekah, "Are you willing to go?" And she said yes. So they left that morning. Rebekah took with her her female servant, and they got on the camels and left. When Rebekah and servant got close to Abraham's, Isaac was out in the field, walking and meditating to the Lord, and he looked up and saw them coming from a distance. So Rebekah got off of her camel and asked who that was, and the servant said that that was his master. So she put her veil on, and she went up to him, and Isaac brought Rebekah to his mother Sarah's tent, and she became his wife. He loved her deeply, and she was a special comfort to him after the death of his mother. Okay, so today I am struck with God's continual blessing of Abraham and protection, but also the depth of Abraham's obedience. Even when God asks him to do something like sacrifice his only son, Abraham is obedient. It doesn't even seem like he questions it. All of the promises that God has given Abraham culminate in this son that he has asked him to sacrifice. And Abraham is willing to go and do that. But he has watched God do the impossible just in the birth of that son. So experience tells him that God has never failed me. So I just simply need to obey and believe that he has my good intended. And then of course God shows up, and God stops him and provides a sacrifice other than Isaac. And now he knows the depth of Abraham's faith and obedience. It is incredible to me. It is one thing to just believe in God and to to worship Him, but to have that level of obedience is something truly special. So, thank you so much for joining me today, and we will talk to you tomorrow.